All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Good morning or afternoon, depending on what area of the world you're in. I know we've got a number of people that are actually joining us from sort of other parts of the world, so welcome. And we're excited to have you here on this webinar that we have been anxiously getting ready to announce this product launch. My name is Leon Morales. I am the managing director here at DNA Behavior. And it is my pleasure to welcome you to this webinar. And just to keep you a couple of details, just to remind you, there's actually a Q&A box down on the bottom panel of the screen, and you're welcome to ask questions as we go through this webinar. It's great. It does get manned by a couple of folks, so there'll be answers as we go along. Sometimes we save those questions to the very end of the presentation and answer those because it benefits everybody in the group. So I've been with the DNA Behavior since 2012, and I have such a huge passion around human behavior, and the work that we do here with the API and this new product launch for the trial is something we've been waiting for quite a while. So Ryan and I are very excited to share these insights and a couple of case studies as we go through this. And I'll do a brief introduction of Ryan, and then we'll get started with the program.
Thanks, Leon. So my name is Ryan Scott. I lead the technology and development at DNA. In my role, I work with businesses to help them commercialize the APIs. So we have a lot of businesses and partners that use our insights and our APIs in order to run SaaS model businesses or provide advisor-centric tools. So I work with all those businesses in order to help them commercialize that, as well as help understand what the business challenges are that these partners and app building firms are trying to achieve, and then help connect that to our insights. So we're going to walk through a few different examples on this call, some case studies, as well as specifics with our API on how we do that. Without further ado, we'll go ahead and jump into our agenda. So essentially, the reason why you're here is for the full product launch. So we've always had an enterprise API, or we have for at least the last few years. And what we've done the last 2 to 3 years is adding more and more insights into that. So the library is quite robust now. And we've also been making some strides in order to make it more available to users. So in the past, it was a custom enterprise API, and now it's completely open and flexible so that all users, regardless of what size of your firm or how you want to use the behavioral insights, you can do so. With this launch, we have a new 14-day trial for clients to really check out the insights and see how they work on a case study basis. And we've made the requirements super simple in order to sign up. So we'll talk about that a little bit at the end about what you need to sign up, but essentially all you need is an NDA with us. There's no billing, there's no procurement processes really that we need to do because there's no client data that we're exchanging. We're really just setting up a case studies account for you to interface with the data to make it super simple. We've made this simple after a few learning lessons over the years. And then as far as the agenda goes, the case studies we'll be covering on this webinar will be related to the DNA API itself. So we're going to go through a financial wellness case study, a client marketing team case study, and a project team efficiency case study. And then if you hold off to the end, and if you're interested in signing up for the API trial, we will explain that.
All right, thanks, Ryan. And for now, I just want to give you some background information around what we do. DNA Behavior started in 2001, and our CEO, Hugh, actually founded the firm, and he was actually a financial advisor. And why he actually sort of embarked on this whole journey on DNA Behavior was he saw clients acting very differently when they were stressed out. So being a financial advisor, he would expect they would come into the meeting sort of under one way, and then with the market started shifting, they would operate very differently, this under pressure. And he really wanted to understand what that was. Why do people act differently sort of under stress? So that's really why he created sort of the underlying behavior. We call it a forced choice assessment model. It really does uncover someone's stress behavior, their hardwired behaviors, and you can actually see when they're intensified how they would react to certain decisions or how they would react to life decisions. And that really was sort of the basis of what we do today on building sort of the API work that Ryan was talking about, whether it's on financial services or organizational development. It services both of those audiences. And what we'll do today is really walk through those in those case studies. But we actually have the ability in predicting habits with people. We can uncover over 200 insights virtually on every human habit around communication, investing, work, life habits, spending, saving. We really uncover all of that related to this concept of the scores choice assessment model. And we do this in two ways. We have two primary products. One's called Communication DNA, and the second one is called Natural Behavior. And with Communication DNA, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's about communication, understanding, how people communicate and being able to have a better experience. And then Natural Behavior actually uncovers investment sort of biases, sort of whether you're a saver or a spender, and then your work style habits, how you actually direct people or how you like to be directed or maybe not directed, sort of those work habits, and then your live behaviors, sort of are you a risk taker or are you more cautious? So it uncovers all of those aspects of personality. And we do this through an omni-channel sort of process or, omni-channel platform, a customized experience, both in person and digitally. So at a bank, let's say that you're working and you go to a client, we can actually use sort of the omni-channel, or a bank or a client can actually use it with their clients, whether it's digital or in person, really knowing the client at a deeper level. And we do this, if you see here on the screen, we do this through the 5 sort of methods or the areas that we focus on. One, organizational. So that's for practice management or work organizational behavior, really understanding who you're working with, managing differences, team development. All those aspects are really created into that organizational sort of module. And then client facing is really around the advisor-client matching. Are you actually matched with the right client relationship, or even a couple client, the advisor knowing these communication keys and these natural behavior insights to work with the client. And then for firms, they spend a lot of money in marketing and maybe miss the mark about 75% of the time. If you actually use a behavioral insight approach for marketing, you can actually target knowing who you're actually marketing to. So there's a whole platform related to sort of marketing to individuals in that client relationship or that work relationship. And then planning and investment, so that when you're actually choosing investments for an individual, an advisor, actually understanding their investing nature and what they actually like to invest in, so they don't have their behavioral biases don't come into play. That gets back to that underlying behavior that we talked about in volatile markets. You can predict how a person would react. And then finally, in compliance, that's really around the suitability of the client, protecting the firm, protecting the advisor. There's a whole compliance program that comes out of this natural behavior force choice assessment model. And the one thing we get asked often about is, why would you go through this process? There's a huge efficiency sort of to using this natural behavior, whether it's in an organization or a financial services organization. If a client spends 10 minutes or an employee spends 10 minutes, it really saves about 2 hours because you really know who that person is at a much deeper level. The client onboarding process can be cut down significantly. Managerial, or, manager to team sort of relationships can be enhanced. And then in the advisor realm, it's really around the client really knows themselves. Then the advisor actually only spends about 3 minutes studying the information, saving about 2 hours of time. And we've got a couple of testimonials, or a number of them, related to how that meeting efficiency can be derived just by looking at the information. You don't have to spend an hour or 2 hours of the third meeting getting to know the individual. So there's a lot of efficiency to creating, kind of implementing this natural behavior questionnaire. We do say the 10 minutes, but we continuously review our UX experience, so cutting down that time. We continue to do that with partners that we work with. And really, the whole premise is just knowing who you're working with. And I mentioned the questionnaire, the science behind it. So we spend a lot of time, really with individuals understanding sort of that science behind what we do in this forced choice assessment model. And on the screen here, you see an example of what the questionnaire would look like. So we say most like and a least like, and you do this a number of times, and it really gets down to that natural and instinctive behavior in an individual. So sometimes you hear questionnaires are situationally based, and ours is really around that, knowing that natural and instinctive behavior. It lasts a lifetime. So if somebody completes the questionnaire and they're 18 years old or they're 13 years old, it's going to be very consistent for the rest of their life, which just takes away that situational bias that some risk questionnaires, sort of in a financial systems model, would introduce. And then Georgia Tech here in Atlanta actually did the validation with our research team. So, and we continue to have a great relationship with Georgia Tech and continuing to work with them. And then finally, the measurable benefits, we get asked this quite a bit. If you use sort of the underlying sort of process we call natural behavior, you can really increase client referrals and retention because you know that person at the pretty deep level. Again, it's around that advisor meeting efficiency. We also, if anybody's familiar with the Vanguard study on behavioral coaching, there's 150 basis points that can be delivered because that what the client's sort of natural behavior is. You can put them in the suitable investment. You're going to be able to be proactive instead of reactive in volatile markets. So the 150 basis points of what a client could do themselves. So the advisors, you can see in a fee-based model, they can really gain a lot more efficiencies and ability to connect with that client and deliver a higher performing portfolio. And then a 23% increased revenue, really that's around bringing in referrals, bringing in more business because you're actually using much more effective communication keys and the data. And then 40% more effective meetings. We see this quite a bit where teams work together and they just don't understand each other, and it leads to a lot of unproductive meetings. And we've got a case study that'll uncover that a little bit deeper. And then around team efficiency, and that 70% is a research number, and I've seen it. I've worked on a number of projects that you can actually have much greater team efficiency if people really know themselves at that natural behavior sort of perspective. So that we continue to sort of work in this space. And one of the things when Hugh did create the company, he saw accelerated performance in each one of these areas in his own business and our business that we run today here at DNA Behavior. And with that, I just wanted to outline sort of what it is and how it works and give a couple of examples. And I'm going to turn it over to Ryan to start our first case study.
Thanks, Leon. And our first case study is going to be on financial wellness. So financial wellness is a hot topic right now in the financial services industry, but it's also growing a lot of traction and a lot of noise just with general businesses. So PwC did a employee wellness survey, and they found that 59% of respondents said that financial matters cause the most stress. So we know from our research that when individuals are stressed, it doesn't just stress them outside of the workplace, it also stresses them when they're in the workplace. So employees are bringing this stress behaviors to their workplace, which leads to loss of productivity, loss of concentration at work, and potential conflicts with coworkers, which leads us to the kind of the span of what we do. So in the past, we've always been focused on, pretty hard-nosed focused on the aspect that we measure money attitudes and behavior attitudes. So behavioral sciences language is trending right now. Everyone is very interested in this. Harvard's done a ton of research on it, and most Fortune 500 companies are establishing behavioral sciences divisions. From the outside, it looks pretty crowded because there's so many different tools and resources that people are using. So on the behavioral attitude side, there's over 2,000 different tools that people use. Our focus, and has always been our focus, is really spanning money attitudes and behavior attitudes. So allowing businesses to see both if they have employees that are taking or participating in the process, and then also in financial services, allowing advisors to get these insights for their clients. This leads us to working directly in financial wellness pretty well. So as you can see here, this is a demo app that we built in-house for using our API. So this will give you a flavor for what we do. Everything that's on the right-hand side of the screen all comes from our API. So we have APIs that will deliver the individual style group results. So as you can see, this person is an influencer. So that's one of our 10 unique styles. We have an API that can deliver a video series to people so they can learn about their own style, as well as an API to drive key financial behavior insights and generate reports. So that's just a few of our APIs. We have over 200 different insights that we do allow firms to use and leverage, and we'll be walking through a few of those examples. But essentially, firms are using this information so that they can understand how employees are approaching financial decisions. So that goes into how they manage budgets at the workplace, and then also what stress are they bringing from home into work and helping bridge that gap. So now we're going to go over a behavioral marketing use case. So our second use case is a specific one where we worked with a large bank in the US, and they were their big challenge or their goal was to customize the marketing for all their clients on an omni-channel perspective. So whether an advisor is working with a client and they say, hey, I have game tickets that you can leverage, or if they're sending out blog articles or resources to clients, they wanted to do that as well on a customized basis. So it's their full end-to-end marketing campaigns. So essentially they had this goal of driving it with behavior. So we used our behavior API in order to do this. So there's two specific case study clients that we've pulled out with this, just so you can see and illuminate what types of insights that we can extract with someone's behaviors. So the preferred meeting contact for this particular client is going to be meetings. So they like in-person meetings, working with an advisor face-to-face. This is a pretty personable individual. They tend to be very outgoing, and they're also very fast-paced. So this particular person is going to want written communication sent to them, be in bullet points, and present the high-level opportunities. Like, get to the point fast, don't write a lot of fluff in there. The meeting space setup, so this is also a key insight that can be behaviorally predicted, is a boardroom. This person tends to be a little bit more formal than other styles, and they're not going to take the opportunity seriously if they're in a coffee shop or in a casual meeting. They're really going to want to go to the boardroom and be able to see and feel and connect with the advisor on that level. Format, again, making it very formal, and then the optimal marketing spend. So this is the key bit here, is that we can predict how a firm should best approach the marketing spend for a per client basis. So this client is the one that you're going to want to really bring all the elements forward. So steak dinner, meeting with leaders, and sporting events. So those are all pretty costly marketing spend items, but if invested in the right way with this particular client, it will pay off. With other clients, like this one I will show you in a moment, this one is going to have a completely different style. So it's going to be a waste of money, to ask them to a sporting event or a steak dinner. This particular client is extremely similar to me. So my style is also a reflective thinker, which is someone that's a little bit more cautious and content. They like to think before they react, and then they don't like being sold to. So they really like transparency, and it makes it difficult in the sales process to sell to individuals like these, because it's hard to get face time and break down those walls and barriers. So for this particular person, the optimal marketing approach would be phone call and an email follow-up. That's the best way to meet with them. It's also much more efficient for your sales team to work with a person like this, because you don't have to meet with them face-to-face. You don't get stuck in traffic, all of that stuff. Be very specific in the writing style. So as much as you can, use facts, figures, and details. Meeting space is going to be warm, functional, and practical. Meeting format, make it very structured. And the optimal marketing spend for this individual is bring them to a coffee shop or give them a gift card to a coffee shop, mail or email a book, and send them a gift card to dinner. So don't offer to take them out to dinner, say, hey, would you, could I send you a gift card to dinner so that you can enjoy this with your friends or family? They will appreciate that so much more because that fits more with their style, and they will always remember you as they're engaging with their friends or family at dinner. So with that, that concludes the optimal marketing use case that we had. I'm going to hand it back over to Leon, who's going to go over a business DNA use case on how the DNA API can be used for project team efficiency.
Excellent. Thank you, Ryan. And I do encourage those of you, I know there's been a couple of questions, but for the financial wellness case study and then for the marketing case study, if you have questions, please enter those into the chat box. And now we're going to actually spend time talking about project team efficiency. And I've worked in a number of organizations. I've run a number of projects, and there's commonality around sort of how you actually run a team much more efficiently. And I was privy to this particular case study when I first started here at DNA Behavior. This one, there was a team of 30 people that sort of worked in an organization that was more of a technical team, and they were really struggling. So this 87% of measurable business issues were, for the most part, they were really struggling as a team. The new leader came in, and there was a sort of a request maybe to disband this team and actually start new, or bring in some consultants to start a new project team. And that really wasn't something that, this company really sort of stood for. They really were much more around employee development. So they brought DNA Behavior in to really understand, how do we actually have this team work much more efficiently and effectively. And so the three areas there: employee engagement, employee retention, and productivity, which is quite important, and operational execution. Those were the three things that really we needed to concentrate on as part of that project team efficiency. And what we found is that the team was pretty relational, and then they had a number of results-focused people on the team, but they didn't communicate really well. They didn't really understand. They didn't have a process to be able to do that. So when they started understanding this underlying natural behavior data about themselves, and then how it related to their team members, there was much better communication, much better throughput. Projects were actually getting done timely, and it was literally a 90-day project that turned around pretty quickly and still sustains itself today, related to that efficiency. But the reason I started this case study around, if any of you have had situations you've worked with, and I've worked on a number of them, usually it's related to a miscommunication, people really not understanding what your intention is or what you're trying to communicate. And that 87% is a real fact number. In fact, there's data out that it costs companies millions and billions of dollars of inefficiency. So if you can really understand and build a platform using sort of this data, this underlying data that we've been talking about, you have a much better opportunity to actually help people understand themselves and how they work better together as a team. And then I asked the question because when we talked about sort of project team efficiency, are you actually on track to achieve your goals for 2020? I'm sure all of us have spent the later part of 2019 defining our goals, but as you started the year, are you sort of on track? Are you sort of having those 87% of communication issues? Are they sort of arising because people don't really understand? There's very simple things you can do to actually help uncover what that is, and maybe some of the barriers to actually achieving those goals. And so what we find, and it's sort of the basis of what we work with, of these results and relationships. And you need both of them in the workplace. And if you don't have both of them, usually you have a team that's too results focused and maybe not thinking about the client, or you're too relational and there's not a lot of throughput going on in the business. It's really about the balance. And what we find in the work we do here in our consulting is that you have leaders that hire people much like themselves, and it's quite natural to you to do that. When Ryan was walking through the marketing study, you really saw what people needed. And a lot of times you hire people much like yourself because it's sort of a natural fit. So you've got to be very intentional when you're hiring your team, that you hire people that are maybe opposite to you in sort of your team. But when you're actually hiring, make sure that you sort of understand that, because you really will be able to, especially this early in the year, be able to achieve your goals. In the results and relationships here, you can see this was actually the team. This is a little cross-section of that team I was talking about. You can see here that 19 of those individuals were very relational, 11 were very results. And it was actually a pretty high-performing team once they understood how people were wired, how they made decisions, what they needed. And then they were able to sort of work in smaller teams to be able to get that team effectiveness. And it's really about people, processing, technology. And rarely is it about the technology. What they found in this technical team, it wasn't the technology. It was really around either process was missing or it was people are sort of not working sort of in the right types of work. And sort of the results of this project that we worked with, there was one individual that actually self-selected to leave. And he just really didn't see himself being part of this team long term, but left to go to another group within that company and thrived sort of in that other role. But it was done without anybody actually being let go. It was quite an effective project. And in the work that we do here, you can see here, this is a team that works together. So fairly informal, you can see here, but using insights, because, you know, some people need big picture. I tend to be much more of a big picture, give me an action plan, key points. You know, others really want to tell stories because it connects the information that they're doing, provide logic, visuals help with individuals. Other people need it, keep it relaxed, you know, reduce the risk. They don't want to feel like they're being imposed on you or sort of called out in a meeting. Make sure that, you know, you create sort of a backup plan because they need more of that stability in the workplace. They're not quite as risk-taking. So you have all of these different personalities. You need that in a business to be effective because if you have all of one, you're probably going to have lack in results. So this gives you, and then you have others that really need facts, need specifics and key points. And if you go back to that point of the 87% of business issues are communication related, think about this. This is a pretty small team, but think about all the different needs here for each one of these individuals. There's a way to do it pretty effectively, and it does not take a lot of time. But if these folks didn't know that they needed this, they could actually have a lot of unproductive time. And that's really why it's so important to know what this natural behavior is of each of your team members. You can develop, you know, much better sort of throughput and achieve your 2020 goals. And Ryan's going to actually spend a little bit of time talking about our API on Business DNA.
Yeah, so we pulled all the data from 2019 on what are the top Business DNA APIs that firms are using, and then we've ranked them here for you. We'll walk you through a few examples. And if you have any specific builds that you're trying to do with your app as it relates to Business DNA, just feel free to schedule a call with us. We have an appointment link or sign up for a trial, and then we can discuss it then. So the top API for Business DNA was the strengths, struggles, and communication keys. So we have an API that will specifically tell you the clients or participants' strengths, struggles, and then also how to create an environment that is perfect for them, and then they'll be the most comfortable whether in meetings or communicating with others. The second API that was popular was the unique style API. So this will tell you the unique style and description of each individual. There's 10 of those, so we automatically will group or segment every individual into their own style group. The third top one was 5 scores from the Business DNA Work Talents Report. So a lot of you are probably familiar with this. The key ones, or the key 5 points there, is the results and relationships metric. So that would be the same metric that Leon was discussing. That's really key to understanding the drivers on how teams achieve goals. Daring and careful, abstract versus concrete, systematic versus flexible, and promoting versus operating. The fourth most popular API was the 12 population weighted insights for employee performance. Those are on the Business DNA summary report, if you're familiar with that. So those are all 12 key insights, 0 to 100 numbers. They're very easy for developers to interpret, and there's some pretty powerful insights there. And then we had some firms that built some pretty cool sales insights and dashboards. So we have a really cool set of behavioral insights related around sales performance. So if you have an advisory team or a team of inside or outside sales professionals, we have 18 key insights in order for you to zero in on sales performance metrics. So now I'm going to discuss a little bit about how the API works. This will go into the trial itself as well, so you understand what you get with the API trial. So once you get everything in the API set up, this is what the end-to-end experience looks like. On the left-hand side, this is essentially what the questionnaire looks like inside of your app. Users do not have to go to our URL. Everything can be white labeled and skinned in your system. In fact, you don't even have to call it business DNA or financial DNA if you don't want to. DNA behavior can power your platform, and that's the kind of language that you can drive and create there. Essentially, the answers are captured inside of your platform. They're sent to DNA behavior. We number crunch the answers, weight them against the population, and then send them back to you in the form of results. Everything in this screen happens so fast that you can prepare and produce the results in real time. So we can send back results to you in a fraction of a second. So therefore, everything can be seamless. And we do recommend that the clients actually do see the results for themselves immediately once they complete the exercise, so that they understand what they get out of it. And they don't feel like, you know, they just spent time completing this profile, but the results are hidden from them. With the actual API, what you get is 14-day access to case study data. So essentially, we've created this portal that easily creates case study data that you can interface with and make calls on in order to interpret on your end. We strongly recommend that you use Postman for this. We put a lot of time and effort into building Postman collections and environment details that we provide to you directly in this trial. That enables you to leverage all of the work that we've done in setting up the Postman environment so that you can immediately start to make requests on the data. Postman is really cool in that it allows you to export the code in about 20 different languages, coding languages, in order to prepare the code that can be slotted into your app. So it's a huge time saver, and it's a great way to test the API and interface with the data. Essentially, we have email support that's available in the DNA API, and you have sandbox access to case studies. If you're wanting more details, the ability to post answers, generate new records, get a higher level of SLA, or more access to our IP, that's all available in the paid API account, but the trial is a great way to get started. And if you have any questions on the API trial, just a reminder that there's a questionnaire or a question box at the top of the screen, so you can answer your questions there or add your questions there. And without further ado, I'll hand it back over to Leon, who will be reviewing the questions that we've received so far, and we can both work to answer those for you.
Great, thank you, Ryan. And if you do have any questions, please enter those into the Q&A box, and we'll sort of handle those as they come in. One question we did have, Ryan, here is, how do I commercialize this? I assume I can build a customized experience with your API and then resell it to my customers on a SaaS model basis. Now, start that, Ryan, and then if you want to add something to it, you can. The answer is yes. We have a number of players actually around the world that actually have gone through this API trial that Ryan was mentioning and sort of built their prototype and then went into production. So there's a number of them actually around the world that we have. We do want to be pretty intentional around sort of the build, so it doesn't compete with somebody else's insights. So we try to make it unique and different. So you work with our team as you build that model, so it's not like we would have 4 or 5 different firms offering the same product or the same experience. So that's one of the things that we do. It really helps develop our ecosystem more robust. And there's just a lot of ideas out there to build sort of an experience. And we really enjoy that. That's part of the work that we love to do, is to help an individual or a company build sort of unique experience with these insights. Anything to add to that, Ryan?
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is, you know, to give you a specific example, is we have a lot of enterprise clients that will want to use our insights in order to package up a specific experience for their employees or advisors. So to give you an example, we work with a bank, and they have built a packaged experience of financial DNA that's custom to their enterprise, and the advisors can access all the insights through their portal. If you aren't a bank and you're essentially wanting to resell technology to advisors, the same thing can happen there. We can work out a set of price and commercialization points in order for there to be a revenue sharing model with that. We have a few startup firms that are on this call, and I know that it's pretty popular for them to also have freemium and premium models. So our API can work in that way as well. We do have a flexible billing process that allows you to give a few insights to individuals on a freemium basis, or so that it will work on your freemium model, and then allow for them to upgrade. And we can keep track of the clients that way in our system as well if you need to come up with a commercial model that makes sense for you. So both can be the case there.
All right, great. Thanks, Ryan. Our second question is, does the Financial DNA API remove the need for another risk profile in my business? And the answer is yes, that it can. The questionnaire is validated. It has been used around since we mentioned the company started in 2001. We've been in a retail version really since 2004. We work with a number of firms around the world. What's interesting is that a number of areas in the world, in the UK and Australia and Canada, they're know your clients much more robust and sort of rigor around it than in the US. But we see that changing in the United States. But they do use it as part of their risk questionnaire. And again, we talked about the reliability of that data. So it's good for the lifetime of the individual. So if you have that information, you don't have to retest the client every few years. There are other things that you can do, like a learned behavior questionnaire, if you want to understand or pinpoint somebody's risk. But for that natural behavior risk questionnaire, it's very reliable. And as Ryan mentioned, when we first started, he showed sort of an example of other players. So we do compete in that space as well for sort of replacing that risk questionnaire. Anything to add to that, Ryan?
The only thing I would add is, we've gone on a few client projects where they have gotten rid of a situational risk behavior. I know that firms or risk tool, a lot of firms are really hesitant to do that, particularly in the compliance department. One key thing that enables people to get over that hurdle is that there was some key research that was done which compared a situational based risk profile versus the forced choice model in context of compliance and risk measurement. They found that forced choice is just a much more accurate approach, and it's more consistent over time than specific situational based questionnaires. So once we work with compliance teams and they get comfort level on that, can see the research and see a few use cases and examples there and actually complete their own profiles in their organization, the comfort level can really start to be driven.
Excellent. Thank you. And then we have a couple more questions. The next one is for Financial DNA end users, advisors, how does a typical financial advisor pay for these insights? So the answer to that question is we have a retail version, with Financial DNA. It's on our website, for an advisor or small practice, they can actually come in and buy it. And self-directed trainer, they can go through training. It's averages about a $1,700 a year package for that. And then we work with a number of firms, much at an enterprise level, where we can actually do sort of an implementation that's guided and sponsored by the company, whether they have the advisors pay for it. We can sort of work out a revenue arrangement, a revenue split that Ryan mentioned earlier, if there's a custom build. And that seems to be where most firms, large firms, like to be. We do know there's sort of apprehension for adding more technology to the advisor's workflow. So building sort of the API where those insights show up as part of their workflow is a much better experience for them. And it allows for the company to, to get the benefit of that and get reduced pricing from DNA behavior because they've done sort of the integration work. Anything to add to that, Ryan?
The only thing I would add is just because I know we have a pretty varied and vast audience on this call, is that if you have any questions about pricing that's specific to your business, we have about 4 different billing models that we can go under with the API. We have a per person billing model, a per advisor billing model, per firm billing model, and then a super flexible billing model. So depending on just what works and for your business and what commercialization terms that you're looking for, feel free to engage us on that, and then we can just give you specifics. Leon and I have been a little bit vague about pricing and things on this call just because we have such a varied audience. We have specific startup pricing as well and a startup program. So if you're a startup firm and you can apply and qualify for all the startup packages, that's a really great entry point for you to get enterprise grade technology at a entry point price. So don't be hesitant or scared away by any of the prices because you might apply for that program as well. Excellent.
Thank you, Ryan. And then just the final question we have is, will this work in Redtail? And the answer would be yes, it would. We've done some initial work with Redtail on integration. I think there are some barriers around that that we've sort of run into, but it could be. I think it really does require sort of a champion in the business, whether it's an advisor or a firm that's using Redtail to be able to help. And all the things that we've talked about here on the integration all apply, would apply for any CRM sort of on the market. And Ryan, do you have any more specifics on a Redtail integration?
Yeah, so I imagine that the person that's asking that question, I can't see that panel right now, but I imagine that they are a current Financial DNA user. So I will say that we are in the process of revamping Financial DNA. So what you see on the screen is the new Financial DNA experience that will be coming to your retail SaaS product package. And then we are also working on making that API enabled, which will ultimately drive that Redtail experience. Redtail, they keep track of the versions that we're under, and they also keep track of user requests, because oftentimes we have to work hand in hand with them in order to build these pretty slick integrations. So if you want to email us, and we can work on getting in touch with the right Redtail person to make sure that you're in the loop on any product updates and any feature requests in that area.
Excellent. Thank you. And I think we might have one more question here. Let's see. Okay. Nope, I guess not. So I think the last part of it is, Ryan, did you have any sort of parting wisdom that you wanted to share with us?
Well, if you're interested in the API trial, we're going to have a team member that's going to reach out to each of you. Her name is Lisa. She'll be reaching out to everybody with some instructions in order to sign up for the API trial. So that's the best way to sign up. As we mentioned earlier, we've made this super, super simple on our end. So all we literally need is your name, your email address, and an NDA signed, and then we can get it set up. We don't need to do any billing or procurement steps with this solution because it is so simple. And if you have any general questions, you're always welcome to reach out to us.
All right, thank you. And we really do appreciate everybody attending this product launch around the API trial. We're super excited about it, as you can tell. And one thing, you will get a survey. It'll be coming from a marketing coordinator, and take some time to fill out the survey because we really do pay attention to the information. We build our webinar series based on that and what the need is. And if you want to have a personal call, as Ryan mentioned, Lisa will schedule that call or make herself available, and we'll get you to the right person if she's not able to help you. But we really want to make it interactive. We really this is the area that Ryan and I probably really excel and like to work in, is when people are building a customized platform working with us. We get a lot of excitement just seeing sort of the different models and different experiences that are being created. And with that, I think we've allocated about 45 minutes for this call. Really appreciate everybody's participation and great questions today. And we look forward to having you on another API webinar, or to talk to you about sort of your own build, or that you're entering into the trial. With that, we'll close this webinar, and you will get a copy of the presentation and the recording later today. So thank you very much.